afternoon or good evening, everyone. In today's webinar, we would be exploring the cost savings opportunities made available in the Microsoft GCC High Cloud, especially for defense industry-based companies that want to be CMMC compliant. My name is John Ibokwe. I am a Cyber AB CMMC certified professional, and I'm the Microsoft GCC High lead architect at Tekaxia. And a little bit about Tekaxia as a company. We are a full-service Microsoft Cloud MSP focused on helping defense industry-based companies leverage the power of the Microsoft Cloud to reduce costs, improve efficiency, and enhance security. A quick overview of the agenda today. We're going to do a quick CMMC 2.0 updates review. From there, we'll take a quick poll, and then we will look at the general CMMC compliance costs. We'll also examine the pathways. What are the options to CMMC compliance with a focus on the costs, accuracy, and efficiency? From there, we'll review the compliance manager and some examples of some letters of attestation from Microsoft that you can use for your own CMMC actual assessments and audits. Next, we'll also look at some critical cost decision factors to consider on your CMMC compliance journey. We'll also answer the question around using the Microsoft Commercial Cloud for CMMC compliance, and then we'll close out with questions. Before we dive in today, please, if you are able, please go ahead and select your answer in the poll in the chat. So if you are able to see the chat, we have a poll up. So please go ahead and select your answer. It's typically a yes or a no. And I'm going to allow a couple seconds for people to answer. Yeah, and the question is, are you currently using the Microsoft Cloud in your organization? Are you currently using the Microsoft Cloud in your organization? We just want to get a sense of how many people in the audience are really using the Microsoft Cloud. All right, with that in place, so please go ahead and indicate your answer, yes or a no. With that, we'll begin with a quick overview of CMMC 2.0. One of the main business drivers for today's webinar is the CMMC compliance. And at this point, CMMC stands for Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. I believe everyone already is familiar with that, but just to clarify that. And that's the main business driver for today's webinar. How do we get compliant with CMMC? And more importantly, what are cost-effective ways to achieve CMMC compliance? As a quick refresher, we know that CMMC 2.0 is currently going through rulemaking and is based on NIST 800-171. We also know that NIST 800-171 has been in effect since December 31st, 2017. And it's also in the DFARS 252-204-7012 clause. So a lot of deep customers or deep companies have the question, how can I know if CMMC affects me? Real quick, if you can check your contracts, if you're a deep company on the call today, if you have the DFAR 7012 clause or the FAR 52-204-21 clause in your contracts, then the CMMC affects you. If you have the FAR clause, it affects you at level 1. And if you have the DFAR 7012, it affects you at level 2. And it all really boils down, if you have FCI or CUI in your environment. With that quick CMMC refresher and updates, let's now direct our attention to specific CMMC costs. On the screen, we have a general overview of CMMC costs. And typically, defense industry-based companies begin with an initial assessment of their accreditation boundary. And by accreditation boundary, we are referring to the question, are you going to audit your entire information system, or are you only going to audit a subset of your environment? And again, once you make that decision of your accreditation boundary or your data flow, and again, it's important to highlight that the data of interest right here is CUI or FCI. Once you make that determination, the next step is evaluating your environment against the NIST 800-171 requirements. Typically, the deliverables of this initial assessment step include generating your system security plan, your SPUR score, and documenting any gaps in your environment. And SPUR, stands for Supplier Performance Risk System Score. And then documenting any gaps in your environment in your plan of action and milestones. Now, someone will be asking, John, okay, what is the cost? Typically, the dollar cost for this initial assessment, based on our market research, is right around $5,000. Another important piece of your CMMC assessment cost is creating and customizing your documentation. And by this, we mean your policies, your plans, and your procedures. And the cost for this can vary from $4,700 to $13,000, depending on are you doing the customization yourself, or are you engaging a third party to help you do that? The next phase here is remediating the gaps you've identified during the initial assessment. As you may know already, the remediation cost will vary depending on the specific gaps identified. So again, this cost varies depending on your specific gaps. The next cost is the actual CMMC audit cost. And from our market research, the audit cost can range from $25,000 to $35,000 at this time. Finally, once you achieve your CMMC compliance, there is a cost to maintaining that compliance. And from our research and experience, that cost can be around $50,000 annually. With this background of the general cost overview, let's now review different cost pathways or options for achieving CMMC compliance. For your CMMC compliance, you may choose to do it yourself, or you may choose to work with a cloud service provider such as Microsoft GCC High and a managed service provider such as Tecaxia. Now let's look closely at the pros and cons of both options. With the do-it-yourself approach, you will need to be a subject matter expert on the NIST framework, on the CMMC requirements, and you also need to be the expert on your chosen technology stack. What hardware, what software, what vendor, if any, are you going to use? You also need to stay up to date on the changes. For example, NIST 800-171 revision 3 just came out, is currently in drafts phase right now. You need to keep up with such changes. And unless your business is about CMMC or NIST compliance and cybersecurity, this can be a more expensive option and more prone to errors. The next option is what we call the winning approach. This includes using a cloud service provider like the Microsoft Cloud, specifically the Microsoft GCC High, and a trusted managed services provider like Tecaxia to collaborate with you on your CMMC compliance needs. For example, with GCC High, you inherit the audited controls from Microsoft. Microsoft actually just passed their voluntary CMMC assessment audit, 100%. So as a Microsoft customer or as an OSC, a deep company using the Microsoft Cloud, you get to inherit those audited controls from Microsoft. You also get lower ongoing costs, and you get a reduced CMMC pre-assessment cost. I have my CMMC, I'm a CMMC certified professional, and one of the process or part of the process to get certified is doing a pre-assessment. When a C3PO comes out to audit your company, there's a pre-assessment that will be done to check your level of readiness, to make sure you're not wasting money and time. And if you deploy this winning approach, it will help reduce that pre-assessment cost as well. And that's why we recommend this approach. The bottom line is that it reduces your overall compliance cost and increases your execution certainty. Now, let's look at some specific tools within the Microsoft GCC High Cloud and actually Microsoft Cloud platform as a whole that is designed to make the journey cost effective and accelerate that timeline to compliance for you. The specific tool we are looking at today is the Microsoft Compliance Manager. The Compliance Manager is one of the major cost-saving tools that Microsoft Cloud provides. Before I learned about the Compliance Manager, a quick story: around October 2020, myself and a Microsoft most valued professional named Alex, we started working on mapping the different capabilities of the Microsoft Cloud to the specific requirements of CMMC. It required a lot of labor hours and subject matter expertise, both in CMMC and in the Microsoft 365 Cloud Platform. The work effort will easily surpass $60,000. However, the good news and the beauty of the Compliance Manager is that you no longer need to do this work yourself. Rather, you can use the Compliance Manager to map your Microsoft 365 Cloud to CMMC requirements. So on the screen, you can see the different CMMC control families and which ones you have implemented. Everything from access control to asset management, all the way to system and information integrity. This way, with a quick snapshot, you can see what controls are in progress, which ones you've passed, which ones you've failed, which ones are out of scope, so on one screenshot. Drilling further into the Microsoft Compliance Manager, on this screen, you can see that for access control, for example, there are 22 categories of action items broken down into your own responsibility as a company using the Microsoft Cloud and also Microsoft's responsibility. It is important to call out here that the winning approach is a shared responsibility between you, the cloud service provider, in this case GCC High, and your managed service provider. So on the screen, we can see that one of the categories of tasks is to encrypt GUI of mobile devices. You can see that you have 7 tasks to complete, and Microsoft has 2 tasks to complete. And you can see the status that of those 2, Microsoft already completed theirs. And on the next screen, you now see the specific 7 tasks you need to complete to meet this CMMC requirements. Again, before we move on from this screen, I just wanted to highlight, many companies don't know about this, but this is a huge cost saver when it comes to CMMC compliance in the Microsoft Cloud and including GCC High. Next, on the screen, these are examples. I mentioned earlier that Microsoft recently actually completed their own voluntary CMMC assessments with a 100% pass score. And these are, and as a company using the Microsoft Cloud, you can actually use these letters. I have an example on the screen, and this is the Office 365 Attestation of Compliance with DFIRS 2022. You can use this letter of attestation in your own CMMC assessment. And so this is that same letter I showed, but on this screen that I'm showing right now, this is the Office 365 NIST 853 audited controls. So this is a spreadsheet showing the actual controls that Microsoft was benchmarked against, audited against, and how they passed it. You can actually use this collateral in your own CMMC assessments as well, because you are using the Microsoft Cloud. Again, this is a huge benefit of using a cloud platform rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. It saves you time and it saves you money. Here are additional benefits of using the Microsoft GCC High Cloud for CMMC compliance. Especially if you're using the GCC High Cloud, you get US person support. When you open tickets or reach out for support, the person is a US person and it's on US soil. You get access to the Compliance Manager. It's basically called the Microsoft CMMC Acceleration Program, which includes the Compliance Manager and other tools like the Azure Sentinel CMMC Workbook and other tools that Microsoft has designed specifically to help companies using the GCC High. And the Microsoft Cloud itself, and especially GCC High, is already designed and tailored for defense industry based companies. And obviously, one other benefit is enhanced security features, everything from the Defender series to Azure Sentinel and more. Now, let's look at some critical cost decision factors, because one objective of today's webinar is to explore cost savings opportunities in GCC High. Let's examine some cost decision factors. The first is simplicity. Rather than use 7 different products or software, the Microsoft GCC Cloud offers defense industry-based companies a cost-effective and a comprehensive one-stop shop for most of their CMMC needs. For example, this is a recent survey that was done. Typically, companies use multiple vendors for different functions, but over the recent years, Microsoft has actually consolidated most of these functions into one platform, the Microsoft Cloud Platform, especially the security stack. And as you can see on the screen, many of the things you use, let's say if you buy one vendor for antivirus, one vendor for anti-malware, one vendor for several security functions, you get all of that under one umbrella with Microsoft and at a reduced price. As you can see on the screen, over 60% savings. It reduces your cost and it reduces your complexity. The next is most of your users are already familiar with the Microsoft Office apps like Microsoft Word, Excel. So using the Microsoft Cloud and platform reduces the learning curve, that your users will have to go through. The next we look at is your operating expenditure. You can pay a lower cost to access the latest and greatest technology stack, including the software and the hardware, and this applies to on-premise as well. Instead of taking on the burden and responsibility and cost of maintaining hardware and on-prem infrastructure, you can offload all of that cost and burden to the Microsoft Cloud as well. And support is readily available, for the Microsoft Cloud platform. Now, as we begin to wrap up today's webinar, let's mention that there are different types of Microsoft Cloud, including the Microsoft Commercial Cloud, the GCC Cloud, the GCC High Cloud, and the Microsoft 365 DoD Cloud. The DoD Cloud is for DoD use only, so we won't even spend a lot of time there. As a defense contractor, you may use the commercial, the GCC, or the GCC High Cloud. If you have export control requirements in your contract, such as ITAR requirements, then you want to use GCC High Cloud. This brings us to a very hot debate or question that is going on right now within the defense industry base. And the question is, or the debate is, can I use a Microsoft Commercial Cloud and still meet CMMC requirements? Instead of giving a straight up yes or no, I'll just take us through 5 data points. Here are some data points that can help you make an informed decision as an OSC. First is, as an organization seeking certification, basically a deep company, you can demonstrate compliance with the FedRAMP moderate level and even high impact level on the Microsoft Commercial Cloud. And yes, that is true. Before, in the recent past, that was not true. But Microsoft made an announcement that you can now demonstrate compliance with FedRAMP on the Microsoft Commercial Cloud. Also, the Azure Commercial Cloud can now demonstrate support for DFARS Clause 252, 204, 7012, especially Clause C through G. And you heard that right. You can demonstrate support for that using the Azure Commercial Cloud. That was not the case before. However, if you have export control requirements such as ITAR, then you need the GCC High Cloud. One other piece of information that many people don't realize is that Microsoft continuously releases new features into the Microsoft Cloud platform. With GCC High, you have a guarantee that before a feature is released into the GCC High platform, that feature will be FedRAMP compliant. But you do not have that guarantee in the commercial cloud, because a lot of times Microsoft acquires smaller companies and introduces their capability into the Microsoft Commercial Cloud. Sometimes those solutions are not FedRAMP compliant out of the gate. So something to keep in mind. And one last data point on here is, A lot of people think, especially deep companies, that if you are FedRAMP, if you're using a FedRAMP compliant cloud, it means your data is in the US and you have US support presence, but that's not actually true. The only thing that guarantees that your data is in the US always and that you have US support is if you're using the GCC High cloud. Again, this is an important slide not to forget because it answers this very important question that a lot of people have. Another popular question that we receive from our customers and other deep companies is, hey, what Microsoft licenses should I use to meet CMMC compliance? Here are typical Microsoft license combinations to consider, but please note that the prices shown here are subject to change. Different partners have different costs for this, and these have changed over the years. So, but this just to give you an idea of what the cost of each of these licenses is over time. And real quick, you can use the business premium license if you're on the Microsoft Commercial Cloud. If you're on GCC High, you can use the E3 or the E5 license as well. You also want to consider using the audio conferencing if you want users to be able to dial in via phone into your meetings. That's where audio conferencing comes in. And obviously, you want to get an Azure subscription, especially if you Azure subscription, if you want to use something like Azure Sentinel. One other piece of data that is important here is the Microsoft Defender for Office 365 Plan 1. This is what actually provides you that capability to check for malicious URLs in your email, in your attachments, in SharePoint, in OneDrive, in Microsoft Teams. The Defender for Office 365 Plan 1 provides you that capability as well. So these are some Microsoft license options to consider in your CMMC compliance journey. Migrating to GCC High, we have helped so many deep companies migrate to GCC High, and we can also help your company migrate to the Microsoft Cloud, whether it's Commercial Cloud, GCC, or GCC High. And we have a very proven process for doing exactly that. We've helped companies over the years, and we can help your company do that as well. We have the right people and we have the expertise. We have very skilled technical folks and business analysts and project managers that have proven this process, used it over and over again for companies of different sizes, both within the deep and in the commercial space as well. We are now going to open it up for questions, beginning with questions we received before the webinar. And I would like to encourage you, if you have any questions, please go ahead and type it, put it in the chat in YouTube. Go ahead and put it in the chat if you're able. But we can start with the questions we received before the webinar. The first question we got is, what are the security features of the Microsoft GCC High Cloud that are particularly beneficial for CMMC? Okay. And again, the question is the security features of the Microsoft Cloud, particularly GCC High Cloud, that are beneficial for CMMC. So there are specific security features that Microsoft provides, particularly for CMMC, and these include the Microsoft Defender series. The Microsoft Defender series includes Microsoft Defender for Office 365. I just mentioned earlier that this is what allows you to check for malicious URLs in your email, in your attachments, in SharePoint, in OneDrive, in Teams. You also have Microsoft Defender for Identity. Microsoft Defender for Identity helps you with the security of your domain controller if you have a domain controller in your environment. Microsoft Defender for Endpoints helps with your laptops, your workstations, your phones. It helps protect that. And you have Microsoft Defender for Cloud App Security. This helps with your software as a service applications in the cloud. So basically your applications in the cloud, Microsoft Defender for Cloud App Security helps protect that as well. Other security features that Microsoft has provided for CMMC includes the Compliance Manager that we discussed earlier today, the Azure Sentinel CMMC workbook. I think there's a 2.0 version now. Obviously, the Zero Trust architecture and capabilities, and there is much more. So these are some of the specific security features that Microsoft has made available both on the GCC High Cloud and on the Microsoft platform to enable deep companies achieve CMMC compliance. All right, the second question is, can smaller businesses also achieve cost savings with CMMC implementation on the Microsoft GCC High Cloud? And the answer is absolutely yes. Smaller businesses can achieve cost savings in their CMMC journey using the Microsoft GCC High Cloud. And like we already mentioned earlier in today's webinar, the winning approach we discussed earlier, Bia's mentioning here, we find from experience that the combination of you as an OSC, a cloud service provider like the Microsoft Cloud and specifically GCC High, and a managed service provider like Tekaxia can really help you, remove the complexity from your CMMC compliance journey and make sure you're doing it right the first time in the most cost-effective manner. So absolutely, smaller companies can achieve cost savings with the Microsoft Cloud in their CMMC journey. And the last question we received ahead of before today's webinar is, are there any potential drawbacks or challenges to using the Microsoft GCC High Cloud for CMMC implementation? And how can these be mitigated? The truth is, the answer is yes. One potential challenge of using the Microsoft GCC High Cloud is that while GCC provides a rich and comprehensive set of capabilities, these capabilities, they need to be configured in a manner that works best for each deep company. And that is where a managed service provider like Tekaxia comes in. As here in Tekaxia, we are a deep and CMMC focused managed service provider. We have the expertise, we have the capability, and we have the experience as well. We've helped and we continue to help numerous deep companies not only migrate to the cloud, we also help them configure and maintain their GCC platform in a way that enables them not only to achieve, but maintain CMMC compliance in a cost-effective manner. So again, in answer to this third question, the GCC High Cloud is a very powerful and cost-effective approach. With that said, many of the capabilities need to be configured in a way that works for each business. And that's where having a managed service provider that is focused on CMMC and the deep space, that's where having that combination provides the highest value. Hopefully, these answers provided addressed these questions that were sent in ahead of time. Do we have any? Okay. All right, we'll allow a couple more minutes, but so far we don't see any additional questions in the chat. Before we close out today, we want to appreciate everyone for your time today. And if you have additional questions, we can help. Let's say if you have questions of what we already went over some licensing options to consider, but if you have further questions around licensing for your organization, we'll be happy to help. We can help. If you have questions of where's your Microsoft data located currently? How can you confirm that? What will it take for your organization to migrate to the Microsoft cloud and specifically the GCC High Cloud? We definitely can help with that, as well. Here is our information on the screen. We'll encourage you to schedule a 30-minute consultation call with us. We have our email, info@tekaxia.com, our LinkedIn handle, and our website as well. Please feel free, don't hesitate to reach out. This is our specialty. We've helped many companies with very good testimonials, and we'll be happy to help you as well. We know you may have other questions, but feel free to reach out to us via the channels on the slide. With that said, we want to say a very big thank you to everyone that took out the time to join today's webinar. Hopefully you found this very valuable and what your time that will be invested in today's webinar. Once again, thank you.